Gentlemen, good to see both of you again. Thanks for your continuing service to our country. The United States has been successful in maintaining air dominance basically since the Korean War, and that has allowed us to provide ground support in every theater we've ever been in. Times have changed, conditions on the ground have changed relative to the war on terrorism, but obviously we don't know where the next adversary is going to come from. Today we know that both Russia and China are building airplanes that they have publicly said compete or, in their opinion, are superior to the F-22, which is designed to make sure that we maintain air dominance. The F-35 is a great airplane, but it's interesting to note that those countries don't even mention the F-35 in their public statements because its mission is primarily air to ground, and from an air dominance standpoint, the F-22 is our lone asset in the sky out there. And obviously we have made a decision to discontinue production of that. We now will have somewhere between 120 and 140 F-22s at any one time available to maintain that air dominance in whatever region of the world the next adversary appears. During the course of your review of the QDR, did your panel have any discussion about this issue? And assuming that you did, what kind of conclusions did you arrive at relative to air dominance?
We thought that the Air Force we need to look at in terms of air superiority. We talked about the need for more long-range strike. There is, of course, also continuing need for a modernized force for lift. Our judgment was we do need a fully modernized force and a fully capable force, but we thought our judgment was that the requirements of the Air Force could be met within the current size of the force. The issue then becomes the right mix, ensuring a fully modernized force within that mix. That was the challenge, and the one thing we emphasized was A, that modernization, and B, long-range strike. As a first approximation, that's how we looked at the Air Force. Emphasis on the air superiority mission, but believing that it could be accomplished adequately within the currently sized force.
Okay. I think it's interesting that you did conclude that the top line needs to continue to rise, and I know one of your panel members was Senator Jim Talon, and Jim and I have been long-time advocates, and I'm sure that he was very forceful in his comments and discussions with the panel about that. You found that the 2010 QDR lacked a clear force planning construct, and that thus by implication DOD doesn't really have one. And in the absence of a clear force planning construct, how does DOD determine priorities, goals, and investment decisions across the department? Dr. Perry?
Our critique of the force planning structure was on the future for the 10 to 20-year planning period. We believe they certainly have a careful consideration of the way to structure the force for the present needs. So the critique was only directed to the 20-year time planning period. That's where we felt that there was a missed opportunity.
In your report, you talk about how the aging of the inventories and equipment used by the services declined the size of the Navy, and the escalating personnel entitlements is going to lead to a train wreck in the areas of personnel acquisition and force structure. In your view, which of these issues is most pressing, and what are the potential consequences of not addressing these issues and those priorities?
Well, certainly number one on my list was the fact that we are simply wearing out or destroying our equipment in the ongoing wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And then the need for recapitalization, as a minimum, the need for recapitalization is going to be very extensive and very expensive. Steve?
I don't think that we had the luxury, really, of picking among the three. We thought all three were a top priority, that we had to save the volunteer force, have adequate structure, and do the modernization. And that really was behind the recommendation.
Mm-hmm. Lastly, I want to veer off course for just a minute and take advantage of both of you being here to ask you a question about an issue that's very much front and center with this committee right now, as well as with foreign relations, and that's the issue of the START treaty. I know both of you have made public comments about that. Tell me, if you will, what concerns, I know both of you have come out in support of the treaty, but what concerns do you have about the treaty? And what would be the implication for the United States if we fail to ratify this treaty in the Senate? Dr. Perry?
I believe if the United States failed to ratify this treaty, our country would essentially lose any ability for international leadership in this field and international influence in the field. I think this would be a very unhappy consequence.
But do you have any concerns about provisions in the treaty?
I do not. I have studied the treaty reasonably carefully, and it's my own judgment that it provides adequately for the national security interests of the United States.
Steve?
I think there are concerns about some ambiguities on some of the coverage issues. There are concerns about whether it indirectly would put some limitations on missile defense or conventional strike. I think there's concerns that we have the kind of modernization of our nuclear infrastructure, our weapons, and our delivery systems to maintain a credible strategic force going forward. The good news is, in the appearance I had on this, Republicans and Democrats seem to share these concerns and believe they need to be addressed. And so my view is, with that bipartisan consensus, let's address these problems in the ratification process, and then we can, on a bipartisan basis, ratify the New START treaty because the problems has been fixed. I have not seen much disagreement about the commitment to a modernized force, to not have defenses constrained, and obviously to sort out any ambiguities. So I think there's a terrific opportunity in the Senate in the ratification process to address these bipartisan concerns, and then, having addressed them, I think people can feel very comfortable about ratifying this agreement.
And your thoughts about not ratifying it, the implications of that?
You know, I don't get there because I think the problems that people have identified need to be fixed in their own right. And once they are fixed, then the issue of ratification becomes easy. So I think and they should be fixed, and then the treaty should be ratified. It makes a modest but useful contribution to the process of dealing with these strategic weapons.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Chambliss. Senator Udall.